Hey guys, it's Jake here with eTrailer. Today we have a 2022 Ford F-250 and we're going to be taking a look at, and I'm going to show you how to install the Firestone Ride-Rite red label air helper springs. Air helper springs are going to be airbags that install between the bottom of your frame and the top of your axle, and they're designed to help to carry the rear end of your truck when you've got a heavy load either on the hitch or in the bed of your truck. The nicest part about airbags is that the air pressure is going to be adjustable. So you can adjust the stiffness, where there's a lot of other components out there that you can use as rear end enhancement, suspension enhancement, that are not going to be adjustable. You have to install them, and then they're at whatever stiffness you've chosen for the kit that you chose. With this airbag kit can go from 5 PSI all the way up to 150 PSI. Now when it comes to adjustability, I highly recommend pairing these airbags with an onboard compressor. An onboard compressor can be run in line with your airbags, so at the click of a button you can adjust your airbags. I have a compressor and a set of airbags on my own personal vehicle, and I can tell you the difference between having to air up with a manual pump. A lot of people will use a bike pump for these airbags because it doesn't take long to build the pressure in the bags. But the problem with that is if you come to a stop and you notice that your vehicle's sagging a little bit more than you thought you would if you were parked at, say, your house or your business, you filled your airbags up, you have no way to adjust that unless you have an onboard compressor. If you pull up to that stop sign, you feel uncomfortable with the back end of your vehicle is sagging to the ground, you can put another 10 or 15 PSI while you're sitting there waiting for the light to turn green. That is the nicest part about airbags, or the onboard compressor. The other thing I like about it is that if you get to your campsite, most people have to leave the pressure in their bags because they don't know where the nearest gas station is that has an air pump, or they don't want to drag their air pump out of their RV again to pump their airbags back up. So they end up running around town the entire weekend or week, whatever their vacation is, with 70 PSI in their bags, which makes the ride incredibly uncomfortable. So adding that onboard compressor is really going to help you to be able to adjust them. This kit is going to come with 2 manual inflation valves. We decided to only use one because we also have an onboard compressor that is paired with these airbags. So you can see here our single inflation valve is run to a set of T-connectors that are connecting to each airbag, and then the other T-connector is going up to the compressor. So if something were to happen, the compressor were to go out when they're out on the road, they can still inflate and deflate your airbags from their manual port back here. Now when it comes to the carrying capacity of these bags, they're going to have a rating of 7,500 pounds. Now that is what they are built and tested to be able to do. I don't know of a single truck out there on the market, at least a pickup truck, that is designed to hold 7,500 pounds in the bed. But with that in mind, you should be able to have peace of mind that your bags are going to be more than strong enough to be able to accept whatever you're throwing at them. Now, as far as the minimum for these airbags go, you want to always leave 5 PSI in the bags. That is just enough air to be able to support the bag and keep the integrity of the bag itself. What will happen is if you empty all of the air out of the bag can fold over itself and onto the bracketry. And what can happen is you can wear funny, it'll wear in different spots and potentially tear the bag. Now, as far as the installation goes, this is not a particularly difficult installation. You don't have to drill any holes. You will have to remove your old jounce bumpers because they will be installed in the place of them. The only thing that you will have to check with your vehicle is whether or not you have a jounce bumper perch. Ours does have a jounce bumper perch, so the way that we're installing them might be a little different from you if you don't have that perch. But otherwise, it's just like putting a puzzle together. It's different sets of hardware. You have to put some parts up in place, take measurements, take them back off, but it's not difficult at all. Definitely a job you could do from your home by laying on the ground. If you take your spare tire out, that helps to alleviate some of the space issues. But with that being said, let's go ahead and pull the truck inside and show you how we did it. To begin our installation, you want to start by lowering your spare tire. That's going to give us some more room to be able to work under here. We do not have a heat shield in the way, which is really nice because typically when you install airbags, you're going to have to remove the heat shield so you can get behind the exhaust area. What we need to start by removing is we need to take down the old jounce bumper because our new airbag is going to fit right in here. So we'll take a 15mm socket in order to do that. we're going to have these factory bolts we'll have to remove. We're using a trim panel tool. You just want to pry it out. You can also use a flathead screwdriver in order to do this. Next, we're going to take our brackets that look like this, take a couple of the zip ties that come in the kit, we're going to thread it through, and then back out the other side. These are going to help us to hold this bracket in place while we thread our bolts up into place, because this is going to go up inside of our frame rail and we're going to need to pull down on the zip tie while we thread the bolt up. Now we'll take this bracket, slide it up and into place. It should slide up fairly easily. We'll want to reach around, there we go. Pop our zip tie out, and then our new bolts. Kind of want to line it up. Our new bolts are going to go right through where our old ones were in this little notch here. So get it lined up in the general area, and then we'll grab our next bracket. Next, we're going to take our bracket that looks like this. We're going to hold it up into place. You'll have these two smaller holes next to the larger holes. Those are for the zip ties. Slide those down in place, and then we'll lift it up flat against the bottom of our frame rail, and then take our bolts and very carefully thread them into place. If you're gentle enough, you can get them to thread into place without having to hold the zip ties. But if you find that you need to, maybe get an extra person to hold this bracket in place while you thread these bolts in. Now we'll take a 7/32 Allen head and zip these bolts up. Now you'll just want to take a knife and cut your zip ties off, because we will not be needing them anymore. Now from here on out, the rest of our installation is going to depend on whether or not you have this jounce bumper perch. We do, as you can see here. If you don't, there's going to be different instructions to show you how to assemble the lower bracket. But for the rest of this video, we're going to show you with the jounce bumper perch. Next two brackets we'll be assembling, they'll look just like this. There's not a driver or passenger specific. We'll take the smaller flathead bolts, slide them up through the back side here, and then follow it with a flange nut. And we'll want to tighten these down until they're snug. Now we can take our assembly that we just made, slide it up and over, make sure it's on top of the spring perch, but we want it back against the U-bolts as far as we can get it. We want to make sure none of these wires are hitting anyway. Essentially what we want to do here is we want to get it lined up pretty straight with the top bracket. We're going to take a measurement. This is going to tell us whether or not we need to use a spacer or to get a larger spacer. We do have a small one that comes in our kit. So we're measuring 7 inches from the bottom of this plate to the top of our bracket. You do need to be sitting on top of the spring perch. So 7 inches, that falls in the measurement range of that we will need to use the included spacer. If that is shorter, you'll need to check with your instructions, and it'll tell you when to use the spacer and when not to. Now, since we're using a spacer, we're going to be needing to use one of the longer flathead bolts. If you're not using a spacer, you can use the same one that we used earlier to be able to attach these brackets. But if you need the spacer, take this long bolt, put your spacer on first, and then take your airbag and thread the bolt into the bottom of it. And you just want to loosely install this, because what we need to do is we need to lift it up, slide it into place. This can kind of get tricky, but we've got a lot of space here actually compared to a lot of other kits. We'll take this cap off. We're going to squish it down, slide it back into place, and we're going to use this forwardmost hole. We are on the passenger side. Forwardmost hole, and you want to make sure that your little notch is popped into the holding place there. So we'll line our bracket back up against our U-bolts, make sure that our spring is straight, Now with everything in place properly, our threaded portions coming through up here, our little notches coming through up on the top, we're going to take a white paint marker and we're going to mark a straight line straight down on all three of these components, the airbag, the spacer, and the bracket underneath, because we're going to need to take this back out and tighten that flathead bolt we just put in the bottom of the airbag. Again, with that 7/32 Allen bit, we tightened it up. Now we're ready to put it back up into place. Slide it up here, push it down, and slide it up. And those holes should all line up like they did before, just like that. Now we're going to take this bracket. This portion of our bracket is going to be the outer portion. This part needs to go in between the leaf spring U-bolts like that, so it doesn't move from side to side. But I found that it's easier to take these bolts, slide them through the back before, and then put the whole thing behind there, because the brake calipers are too close to be able to fit these long bolts back there. We'll take this whole thing, slide it up, make sure they go around the springs, and slide them through the holes. Now when tightening these up, you'll want to be sure to put even pressure on all four of them. You want to treat it just like a U-bolt. Put a little bit of pressure on each one. Since we are just going to be tightening these down, there is no torque spec. We'll want to just snug them up evenly. I like to get them hand tight all the way, that way you can get the bracket properly adjusted. And we'll take that 15mm socket and snug them up. Now what we can do is we'll take our airbag, pull it down, slide our heat shield up into place, and then line it up again. You want the heat shield to be right here, the closest part of the exhaust to the assembly. Then we'll take the large nut that comes in your kit, and that's going to thread on top of the airbag. We'll tighten and torque that to the specifications and the instructions. Now what we need to do is we need to insert the inlet for the top of our airbag. This is going to be installed on the top of the bolt that we just put that large nut on. The inside of that is threaded. And we're going to tighten it until we can't see any more of this red thread locker. And that is per the recommendations of Firestone. So we'll thread that into place. Now what we can do is we can go ahead and repeat that same process on the driver's side of the vehicle. The only difference is you're not going to have a heat shield to put up in place. Now with both sides installed, we can now begin running our airlines. Now to get your airlines run, again, we do have a compressor installed, but if you're not installing a compressor, the kit will come with the bracket for your airlines. We have a single because we're only going to have one manual fill to fill up both airbags. If you want to fill both airbags at the same time, you will route them just as I'm going to show you. If you want each side to fill individually, you'll just run two separate lines. But we put our Schrader valve here, ran our line up. You just want to follow existing wiring. You can see it there. Go across the wiring. Stay away from anything moving, so we've got that behind our shock so we don't have to worry about it. And then you'll want to put a T in if you're wanting to fill both bags at the same time. Run one side in, then out into your driver's side bag, and then out over to directly into your passenger side bag. If you've got a compressor, you'll want to run it through, again, another T, into the T, down into your bag, and out to go to your compressor. This setup is going to allow you, the way that we did it, is going to allow you to have a flow through to be able to use the manual fill or the compressor, and it'll air up both at the same time no matter which one you're using. If you're wanting to run two separate lines, run a single line from the Schrader valve in the back straight to your bag on the driver's side, and then the same for the back, straight to your bag on the passenger side. And then you'll have your manual fill for each side. Now we can go around and test out our fittings. Essentially what we're looking for here is leaks. You'll see some big bubbles if you do have any leaks. So we're taking some soapy water. You'll want to hit each side of the joint. Now if you see any little bubbles like you have there, they're not reforming, it's just probably from the soap. But we'll hit every connection on there, looking very carefully for leaks, because even a small leak, especially if you don't have a compressor, and you go on a road trip or something, you're going to end up having to find a compressor in order to put some air back in. So that joint looks good, and we'll just keep going through all the other connections we made and make sure we don't have any leaks. Well guys, once you figured out that you have no leaks in your connections, that's going to do it for the installation.